Welcome back to Midnight Whispers. I'm Hugh, and tonight the candle burns lower, the air grows colder, and the veil between the living and the dead thins once again, following the haunted footsteps of Bell Witch, the mysterious halls of Myrtles, Plantation, the Shadow Man, and the mind-bending Winchester House. We now journey even deeper into the realm of the unseen. This time, we unravel 4 more chilling tales, from lonely highways to haunted asylums, from spectral women in white to the restless spirits of Alcatraz. These aren't just stories, they are whispered warnings from the other side. It begins, as many of these tales do, with something seemingly ordinary: a late-night drive on an empty stretch of highway. The road is long, winding through hills and forest, the kind of path where headlights are swallowed by the dark and silence hums louder than your engine. James, a truck driver from Illinois, had been hauling freight for nearly 2 decades. He was no stranger to driving through the night, but one particular route, along Route 44 near a small town in Missouri, changed everything. He was passing mile marker 238 when he saw her, a young woman in a pale blue dress, standing alone on the shoulder. She had long dark hair, soaked from the rain, and a vacant, almost glassy stare. Out of instinct and concern, James pulled over and offered her a ride. She nodded without speaking, climbed in, and quietly whispered, "Thank you." For miles, she said nothing. She stared straight ahead, hands clasped tightly in her lap. When James asked where she was going, she replied with a location he recognized: a house about 15 miles down the road. As they approached the turnoff, James looked over to ask which driveway to take. But she was gone. Not a door slam, not a sound, just an empty seat, rainwater still pooling on the leather. James was shaken. He turned around and drove to the house she had mentioned, not knowing what else to do. An older woman answered the door. When James described the girl, her face fell. "That was my daughter," she said softly. "She died on this road 20 years ago. In the quiet hills of Louisville, Kentucky, sits the towering silhouette of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, once a place of healing for tuberculosis patients, now a shell of sorrow and echoes. During the early 1900s, tuberculosis ravaged the area. Waverly Hills was built as a sanctuary, but with limited treatment and overwhelmed staff, it soon became a place of mass death. Anna worked as a nurse during the peak of the outbreak. She witnessed countless deaths, and over time, her heart grew numb. But the moment that broke her came not from disease, but from despair. One night, another nurse discovered Anna hanging from a light fixture in room 502. Rumors spread. Some said she was pregnant and abandoned. Others believed she was overwhelmed by death. But then the sightings began. Visitors walking past the old nurse's station reported hearing crying behind locked doors. Shadows darted down the hallways. A figure in a nurse's uniform was seen peering out of the broken window of room 502, only to vanish when approached. Ghost tours became popular. Paranormal investigators captured EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, of a woman whispering, "It hurts." No one ever saw Anna die, but many believe she never truly left. There is a legend shared in hushed tones in towns across America. The lady in white, different places, different names, but always the same chilling image: a woman in a flowing white gown searching for something or someone. In rural Pennsylvania, a stretch of road near a stone bridge is said to be her home. Teenagers dared each other to drive through at midnight. Some reported seeing her walking the roadside. Others said she appeared in their back seat. But one night, 3 friends recorded something different. They had a dash cam running at 12:03 a.m. While crossing the bridge, the camera caught a faint silhouette standing in the road. As they slowed down, the figure glided forward and disappeared into mist. Back home, when reviewing the footage, they heard a low sobbing sound. Not from the car, but from the audio track itself. The local legend says the lady in white lost her child in the river under that bridge. Every night she searches, bound by grief. Alcatraz, the Rock, a fortress prison surrounded by frigid, deadly waters. It held some of the most infamous criminals in American history. But some say it holds more than that. Guards spoke of footsteps echoing in empty corridors, doors slamming on their own, cold spots in the warmest rooms. But it wasn't until after the prison closed that the stories intensified. A former park ranger, Ellis, recalls one night doing a solo patrol. He heard whispers coming from cell block D, the solitary wing. The voices weren't angry or loud. They were pleading. As he approached the cells, he saw a man in an old prison uniform sitting silently behind the bars. When Ellis shined his flashlight, the man looked up and vanished. Later, Ellis discovered that the cell was once occupied by a prisoner who died under mysterious circumstances. Found clawing at the walls, claiming a dark entity was trying to drag him away. Some say that entity is still there, and so is he. The next morning, after his ghostly encounter, James couldn't shake the chill from his spine. He returned to the mile marker where he first saw the hitchhiker. For a while, nothing happened. But then, from the corner of his eye, he saw the girl again, not walking, not standing, but simply there. Her face was turned away, but her presence was unmistakable. Before he could speak or move, she vanished once more into the morning mist. James began digging into the legend. He visited the local library and found old newspaper clippings. One article detailed a car crash from 1983. A young woman had been struck and killed during a storm, only a few hundred feet from where he'd picked her up. Her name was Lily Harper. She was 19. The eerie part? James's truck had passed that exact curve at precisely the same time of night the accident had occurred. Over the years, dozens of similar stories had emerged. Different drivers, same girl, same stretch of road. Locals began calling her the Vanishing Hitchhiker. Later that week, James received a letter, no return address, just a single sheet, inside with the words, "Thank you for the ride," scrawled in shaky handwriting. He never spoke of it publicly again. At Waverly Hills, the paranormal team's footage went viral. Major networks contacted them, but the attention didn't bring closure, only more mystery. The team returned a month later with more advanced equipment. They attempted to contact Anna directly. Using a spirit box, they asked, "Why did you stay?" The reply crackled through the static. "They forgot me." Temperature drops were recorded. EMF spikes surged in short, intense bursts. At one point, all their equipment shut down at once. Batteries drained, despite being fully charged minutes earlier. When reviewing audio logs later, they found a whisper layered beneath their questions. "I see you." One investigator, deeply disturbed, refused to return. She later claimed that ever since that night, she'd seen a woman in white standing at the foot of her bed, always watching, never moving. As the legend of the lady in white spread, a local historian uncovered a tragic story. In 1924, a woman named Eliza Halloway lived near the bridge. Her child drowned during a flood, swept under the stone arch late one night. Eliza was found days later, soaked and incoherent, walking the roadside in a white nightgown. She died a year later. Suicide, they believe. Her diary was discovered in a chest by her great-granddaughter. The last entry read, "He cries from the water. I will go to him." After that, the road was renamed Halloway Crossing, but teens still call it Crybaby Bridge. The three friends who'd brought flowers returned one final time, determined to put the spirit to rest. They lit candles by the river and read aloud Eliza's diary. The night passed in silence, but when they left, their rear windshield once again bore new handprints. This time, larger, adult-sized, accompanied by one word traced into the misted: glass, peace. Back on Alcatraz, Ellis and the historian found more on Frank Lyons. He'd claimed during his final weeks that an old prisoner, long dead, came to him in dreams, warning him of a coming darkness. He began drawing the same symbol over and over in his cell, a jagged eye with an X across it. Prison records confirmed another inmate decades earlier had drawn the same symbol before disappearing under mysterious circumstances. Ellis's dreams became haunted by the same dark corridor. He heard keys jingling, footsteps pacing, whispers repeating the same phrase, "I never left." The historian suggested the entity wasn't Frank, but something older, something tied to the prison itself. During a stormy night, Ellis stayed one last time. At midnight, the lights in the prison flickered. From cell block D, he heard music, a soft hum of a 1940s jazz tune. It was Frank's favorite, often played on prison radios. As he approached, the melody cut off sharply. Inside the cell, he saw the red Joker card again, this time pinned to the wall with an old, rusted nail. He left that night and never returned. He later mailed the Joker card to a paranormal researcher who claimed the card itself carried a residual energy unlike anything he'd seen before. And so, 4 stories, 4 echoes, all pointing toward the same truth. The dead do not rest quietly. They wander the highways. They linger in rooms of sorrow. They search for what was lost, and they reach out from behind bars of time. Some seek justice. Some seek closure. Some simply want to be remembered. We've listened. And now, so have you. This is Midnight Whispers. Until the next tale finds its way to your ears, keep your lights on, just in case. The air was still heavy from the tales we had just left behind, of phantom hitchhikers, haunted hospitals, grieving mothers in white, and the eternal echoes inside Alcatraz. But as always, the night has more to give. Our next tale begins in the silent forests of upstate New York, where shadows aren't always just the absence of light. In this quiet corner of America, one family's home became the stage for a series of chilling encounters with something they could never quite explain, something they called the Whispering Man. It started with small things: a misplaced toy, a door that creaked open on its own, whispers at night, unintelligible but rhythmic, like someone reciting a forgotten prayer just beyond the walls. The Thompson family thought it was the house settling, or perhaps the wind in the trees. But then their youngest, Lily, began speaking to someone they couldn't see. "He stands in the corner," she told her mother one evening at dinner. "He never moves. He waits." Karen Thompson tried to laugh it off. Kids had imaginary friends. But her laughter caught in her throat when Lily continued, "He told me your name. He told me what you did when you were little." That night, Karen couldn't sleep. Around 2:33 a.m., she got up for a glass of water. As she stood in the kitchen, she heard it clearly, a low voice, almost a whisper, from the hallway behind her. "Karen," she spun around. Nothing, just darkness. From then on, things escalated. The family cat refused to go into Lily's room. Picture frames fell from walls without reason. Their son Ben, 12 years old, and not one for make-believe, claimed someone was knocking on his window at night. They lived on the second floor. Karen finally confided in her sister, who recommended a local medium. Her name was Clara Redmond. Old, soft-spoken, and nearly blind, Clara stepped into the house with a kind of sorrow on her face. "There is something here," she said immediately. "But it's not human anymore." Clara held a seance in Lily's room. They formed a circle, candles lit. The air grew cold, frigid, like being outside in January. Clara began to chant. Within minutes, Lily went stiff. Her eyes rolled back, and in a voice not her own, she said, "You took her name. You took her face. She's mine now." Clara screamed for everyone to break the circle. The candles blew out. In the darkness, a sound like fingernails across wood echoed through the walls. The Thompsons left the house that night. They never returned. The home stood abandoned for a year before a new family moved in. They had heard nothing of the previous occupants, but 2 weeks after settling in, their daughter asked them why the man in the closet smiles when I sleep. That story, horrifying as it is not unique. All across America, families whisper the same fears of presences that never show their faces, of voices that speak without form. The Whispering Man is just one of many. But what if he's all of them? What if the shadow in the closet, the figure at the window, the voice beneath your bed is one entity, many names, always watching? We're not done yet. The night is still young, and more stories beg to be told. The Thompsons never returned to their home on the edge of the forest, but their story did not end when they fled into the night. The house remained empty and brooding, as if waiting for something or someone to finish what had begun. In the weeks after the family's abrupt departure, neighbors reported strange happenings that no one could easily explain. Flickering lights would dance behind dusty curtains, though the electricity had been cut off. Faint whispers drifted on the wind, words just out of reach, rhythmic and hypnotic. The air around the house grew thick, heavy, as though the walls themselves exhaled a cold breath. The local sheriff, skeptical at first, was called to investigate after reports of loud banging noises late into the night. But when he stepped onto the porch, the hairs on the back of his neck stood straight up, and the noises ceased as suddenly as they had started. No one dared to stay inside the house. Friends and family of the Thompsons avoided it entirely, leaving the once vibrant home to rot beneath the gnarled branches and creeping vines of the surrounding woods. One evening, nearly 6 months after the family had fled, the doorbell rang in a small cottage 5 miles away. Clara Redmond, the medium who had once held the seance in Lily's room, stood at the threshold. Karen Thompson's sister, Marianne, had called, desperate and haunted by her sister's words and the terrifying voice that seemed to echo even in her dreams. "You must come back," Marianne pleaded, clutching Clara's hands. "Something is still there. Something that didn't leave with them." Clara nodded silently, her eyes clouded with concern and something darker, recognition. Returning to the house was like stepping into another world. The trees bent inward, shadows stretched long and unnatural across the cracked pavement. The air was colder here than anywhere Clara had ever been, as if the house had swallowed the warmth of the earth itself. She crossed the threshold without hesitation. Inside, the floorboards groaned beneath her feet, dust swirling in shafts of fading sunlight. The silence was oppressive, not empty. She moved to Lily's bedroom, where the past lingered thickly like a stubborn stain. The closet door stood slightly ajar. Clara reached for a jar of salt, sprinkling a circle on the floor. Around it, she placed candles, white, black, and deep purple, and lit them carefully. The flames flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to sway to a silent rhythm. She closed her eyes and began to chant softly, calling on the spirits and powers beyond, seeking to uncover the truth hidden beneath the surface of this haunted place. Minutes passed. Then, suddenly, the air shifted. The temperature plunged. Clara's breath frosted before her lips. From the shadows of the closet, a figure began to take shape, amorphous at first, then solidifying. A tall man, his form blurred and indistinct, like smoke twisted into human shape. His eyes were pits of pure darkness, his mouth stretched into a twisted, sorrowful smile that sent a shiver down Clara's spine. The whispering man. "Why do you linger?" Clara demanded, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. He did not answer at once. Instead, the room filled with the soft sound of whispering, like a prayer spoken in a forgotten tongue. "You took her name," the spirit finally hissed, voice a chilling echo of Lily's own. "You took her face. She is mine now." Clara's hand trembled slightly as she held her ground. "You are bound here by pain," she said, "by anger. But this is not your home anymore. Release her. Let her go." The whispering man's smile faltered. A deep sadness replaced the malice in his eyes. "I remember," he whispered, voice cracking. "I was forgotten, betrayed, stolen from the world of the living. Now I wait, and I take what is owed." Clara tightened her grip on a small, worn talisman around her neck. "This ends tonight." What followed was a battle not of fists or weapons, but of wills and spirits. The whispering man lashed out with shadows, thick tendrils of darkness that clawed at Clara's skin like icy fingers. But she held fast, chanting louder, the power of the ancient words filling the room and pushing back the darkness. The candles flickered violently, some extinguished by unseen gusts. A sudden, violent wind tore through the house, rattling windows and shaking the floorboards. Then, in one blinding flash, the spirit screamed, a sound so raw and full of sorrow, it threatened to tear the very air apart. And then, silence. When Clara opened her eyes, dawn was breaking. The house felt different, lighter, almost breathable. The cold that had gripped the rooms was gone. The oppressive presence of the whispering man had lifted. She stepped outside, exhausted but victorious. The house remained empty for another year. Stories spread quietly through the town about the house at the edge of the woods, the one where shadows moved on their own, where whispers haunted the wind. Then a new family arrived, unaware of the history tied to the weather-beaten house. The first night, the little girl, Emily, asked her parents about the man in the closet. "Why does he smile when I sleep?" she whispered. Her parents exchanged uneasy glances, because some stories never truly end. The whispering man is more than just a ghost story. He is the embodiment of forgotten grief, stolen identity, and the pain of those trapped between worlds. He lingers where names are forgotten, where faces are stolen, where memories are lost, and as long as there are stories to tell, he will be waiting in the corner, in the shadows, in the whispering wind. Following the haunting tale of the whispering man, our journey takes us from the shadowed forests of New York to the lonely roads of the American Midwest, where legends of lost souls and restless spirits come alive. The night air was crisp, carrying a hint of autumn's chill as Tom Bennett eased his car down Route 67, a stretch of highway notorious among locals for the ghost stories that seemed as real as the road beneath his tires. The moon hung low and pale, barely illuminating the endless ribbon of asphalt that cut through fields and woodlands, a path that many feared to travel after dark. Tom was a mechanic by trade, a husband and father who'd worked a long day repairing engines and fixing brakes. Now, tired but determined, he was heading home to the small town of Millfield, his thoughts already drifting toward a warm dinner and his family's waiting smiles. As he rounded a sharp bend, headlights briefly illuminating the trees along the roadside, Tom caught sight of something that made him slow instinctively. There she was, a young woman, standing at the edge of the road, thumb outstretched in that universal gesture of a hitchhiker. She wore a flowing white dress that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight, her hair dark and loose around her shoulders. Despite the cold night air, she shivered slightly, her pale face framed by shadows. Tom's heart skipped a beat. He had heard the stories, whispered warnings passed from generation to generation about this very stretch of road. The vanishing hitchhiker, they called her, a ghostly figure who appeared suddenly to weary travelers, only to disappear without a trace, leaving behind more questions than answers. But something about her wasn't frightening. It was sad, lonely, like she was waiting for something or someone that would never come. He pulled over, flicked the high beams off, and opened the passenger door. "Need a ride?" he asked, voice low. She nodded, slipping into the seat with a quiet grace that sent a chill down his spine. The car's interior felt colder the moment she sat down, the warmth of the heater barely touching the space around her. Tom glanced at her, trying to catch her eyes, but she stared straight ahead, expression unreadable. "Where to?" he asked gently. She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper, when she finally spoke. "Just down the road." They drove in silence. The hum of the engine filled the space between them. Tom tried to start a conversation, asking about the weather, about Millfield, but she gave no response, only watching the trees slip past the windows. As the miles stretched on, an uneasy feeling began to grow inside Tom's chest. He looked again, suddenly alarmed. The passenger seat was empty. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. He slammed on the brakes, eyes scanning the roadside frantically. No sign of her. No footprints in the gravel. No movement in the shadows. Only the cold wind whispering through the trees. Tom's story spread quickly through Millfield. Over the following nights, strange things began happening. His phone rang in the dead of night, soft sobbing on the line, a whisper repeating his name. His wife swore she saw a woman in white standing in their garden, vanishing the moment she blinked. Tom himself felt the weight of unseen eyes watching him wherever he went. The town's oldest residents nodded knowingly. "You picked her up, didn't you? The vanishing hitchhiker doesn't just appear for no reason." Legend says that decades ago, a young woman named Mary was killed on that very stretch of Route 67. She'd been fleeing a life she couldn't escape, a forced marriage, a family she never chose. She flagged down the first car she saw, hoping for a ride to freedom. But that ride became her last. Since then, her spirit is said to roam, searching for a way home that no longer exists. Tom's encounter was only the beginning, because the vanishing hitchhiker doesn't just disappear. Sometimes she follows. The morning after Tom's chilling encounter, the town of Millfield was buzzing quietly, with whispers and speculation. Everyone knew the legend of Mary, the girl who vanished one cold autumn night decades ago. But hearing it firsthand from someone who had actually seen her made it all disturbingly real. Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him home that night, the heaviness in the air, the cold spots inside his house, even the fleeting glimpse of a pale figure outside his window. It was as if the boundary between the living and the dead had thinned just for him. Over the next week, Tom became a man possessed. He scoured old newspapers and town records, desperate to find the full story behind Mary's tragic death. He learned that Mary was just 18 when she died, young, full of dreams, and desperate to escape a life she felt trapped in. The reports said she had been hitchhiking home after a fight with her family, wearing a white dress. Witnesses claimed a car had stopped for her near the spot Tom had picked up the ghostly figure. But moments later, her body was found by the roadside, crushed beneath a speeding truck. No one had ever found the driver who caused her death. The Rohan tragedy had been buried under time and silence. That night, Tom sat alone in his living room, flipping through the brittle, yellowed pages of an old newspaper. The headlines screamed, "Young woman killed on Route 67, hit and run." He could almost feel Mary's presence in the room, the faint scent of jasmine lingering in the stale air. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, an unknown number. He answered, his voice shaking slightly. "Tom," a whisper, soft, fragile, but unmistakably her voice. "Help me." The line went dead. Tom knew then this was no ordinary haunting. Mary's spirit was reaching out, asking for something. He felt a strange mixture of fear and determination. Whatever it was, he had to find a way to help her rest. The next night, Tom returned to the scene of the accident, Route 67, under the full moon. The air was heavy with mist, the trees lining the road like silent sentinels. He parked near the exact spot where Mary had been picked up and where she vanished. Holding a flashlight, Tom walked slowly along the roadside, looking for anything unusual. A white scarf caught on a branch, a faint footprint pressed into the soft earth. Then he heard it, a soft sobbing, carried by the night wind. He turned toward the sound and saw her, standing just beyond the tree line, her white dress glowing faintly, hair drifting like smoke. Mary, she looked at him with eyes full of sorrow. "I can't cross over," she whispered. "Why?" Tom asked, voice barely audible. "My story. It's not finished." Tom listened as Mary told him about the night she died, about the fear, the pain, and the injustice of a life cut short. But most of all, she spoke of her desperate wish for closure, for the truth to be known, and for the driver who killed her to be found. "I've been trapped here, waiting for someone to remember me," she said, "to set me free." Tom promised he would help. Back in Millfield, Tom began an investigation that would consume him. He revisited the police reports, interviewed old witnesses, and pieced together a story long forgotten. Late one night, he uncovered a lead, a name, whispered in an old report, but never followed up on. Frank Dalton, a local truck driver who disappeared shortly after the accident. Tom's heart pounded. Could Frank be the key to freeing Mary? Determined, Tom sought out anyone who knew Frank. The search led him to a retired mechanic, old friends, and dusty records. The truth was buried deep. Frank Dalton had been involved in a hit and run. Rumors swirled that he fled town, guilt-ridden, but no one had ever come forward with proof. As Tom delved deeper, strange things started happening again. His phone buzzed with calls of static and faint voices. The silhouette of a woman appeared in the mist outside his window. One night, a single white rose was left on his doorstep, fresh and dewy. Though no one had seen anyone near, Mary was close. The night Tom finally confronted the past, he drove to an old abandoned barn where Frank Dalton was rumored to have hidden out. Inside, the air was thick with dust and memories. Tom found a box of old belongings, including a faded photo of Mary and a broken truck mirror cracked like a shattered soul. Suddenly, the barn doors slammed shut behind him. A cold presence filled the room. Mary's whisper floated on the air. "Thank you." Tom felt a peaceful calm wash over him. The spirit of Mary, the vanishing hitchhiker, had finally found what she was looking for, and as dawn broke, the chilling weight lifted from Route 67. But the road remains, and sometimes, late at night, Travelers still see a figure in white, waiting by the roadside, because some souls don't rest until their stories are told. After the haunting journey with the vanishing hitchhiker, we leave the lonely roads behind and enter the crumbling halls of one of America's most notorious places of suffering and mystery. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, perched atop a lonely hill in Louisville, Kentucky. Waverly Hills Sanatorium loomed like a forgotten giant beneath a gray sky. Its towering silhouette cast long shadows over the surrounding trees, and the wind whispered through broken windows and rusted iron gates like a mournful lament from the past. The sanatorium was built in 1910 to fight one of the deadliest diseases of its time, tuberculosis. Over the decades, thousands of patients passed through its walls, many never leaving. The grim history of suffering, isolation, and death stained every brick, every corridor. But beyond the documented tragedies, darker stories thrived, stories whispered among locals and urban explorers, of restless spirits, of mysterious shadows, and unexplained noises echoing through the empty halls. It was on a crisp autumn evening that a group of 4 friends, Mark, Sarah, Lisa, and Jason, decided to explore the abandoned sanatorium. Drawn by curiosity and tales of the supernatural, they hoped to capture something on camera, some proof of the legends that surrounded Waverly Hills. Armed with flashlights, cameras, and nervous excitement, they pushed through the rusty gate, the creak of the hinge slicing the silence like a scream. The air inside was thick with dust and decay, the scent of mold and forgotten memories hanging heavy. The walls bore peeling paint, and the floors groaned beneath their feet. Mark led the group, his voice steady despite the palpable tension. Keep your eyes open. They say this place is the most haunted spot in America. Sarah swallowed hard. I heard some patients used to scream for days before they died. Lisa shivered, clutching her camera tightly. I just want to see something real, something that proves this place isn't just an old building. Jason, ever the skeptic, scoffed. It's just a building. Stories like these get exaggerated. They moved cautiously through the main hall, passing empty rooms where beds once stood. Medical equipment rusted and broken. The silence was thick, broken only by the distant drip of water and the occasional scuttle of rats. Suddenly, Lisa's flashlight flickered and died. She cursed softly, shaking the device. In that moment, a cold draft swept through the hallway, raising goosebumps on their skin. From the shadows, a faint whisper drifted. Leave. Sarah's eyes widened. Did you hear that? Jason smirked, probably just the wind. But Mark's face was pale. I don't think so. They pressed forward toward the infamous body chute, a hidden tunnel once used to transport deceased patients discreetly away from the public eye. The tunnel was said to be a hotspot of paranormal activity. As they reached the entrance, the temperature dropped sharply. Their breath turned visible in the freezing air. Lisa raised her camera, the lens fogging. Suddenly, the sound of dragging footsteps echoed behind them. They spun around. Nothing. Then, from the darkness of the tunnel, a faint glow appeared, like a lantern swinging gently. Mark stepped closer, heart pounding. Who's there? The glow flickered and vanished, Sarah whimpered. We should go. Jason, however, was transfixed. Then, the unmistakable sound of a child crying echoed down the tunnel, a hollow, mournful sound that sent shivers down their spines. They fled the tunnel, the cries chasing them into the night. Back outside, trying to catch their breath, Lisa reviewed the footage on her camera. What was that light? She asked. Mark shook his head. I don't know, but I think Waverly Hills just showed us its true face. The stories of Waverly Hills don't end here. It's said that the spirits of those who suffered and died in silence remain trapped inside, bound by pain and sorrow. Some say you can still hear the coughing of tuberculosis patients in the dead of night, or glimpse shadowy figures peering from broken windows. Others warn that the sanatorium feeds on fear, and those who visit risk becoming part of its endless nightmare. Following the terrifying night inside Waverly Hills Sanatorium, the chilling echoes of ghostly cries and flickering lights haunted the four friends relentlessly. They left the building shaken, but unable to escape its grip on their minds. In the days that followed, Mark, Sarah, Lisa, and Jason struggled to process what they had witnessed. The footage Lisa captured showed strange orbs of light drifting through the halls, unexplained shadows crossing the camera's view, and faint, indistinct voices caught on audio, some pleading, others whispering warnings. Yet something more unnerving was happening. Each of them began experiencing strange phenomena beyond the walls of the sanatorium. Sarah woke one night to find her bedroom filled with an icy chill. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if something unseen was pressing down on her chest. She saw a faint, pale figure standing silently at the foot of her bed. An old woman in tattered hospital gowns, her eyes hollow and sorrowful. The apparition did not speak, only stared before vanishing like smoke. Lisa found her camera mysteriously wiped clean of all files except for one grainy image. A distorted figure standing in a doorway, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Jason's usually skeptical mind was fraying. He began hearing disembodied footsteps trailing him as he walked alone, and one night awoke to find deep scratch marks on his bedroom door. Marks he was certain hadn't been there before. Mark, burdened with guilt and fear, dove deeper into Waverly Hills history. He uncovered stories of cruel treatments inflicted on patients, experimental surgeries, forced isolation, and relentless despair. Many who entered the sanatorium never returned whole, physically or mentally. The sanatorium's most infamous Dr. Walter R.B. Dyer was said to have conducted gruesome experiments on patients trying to find a cure for tuberculosis. His methods were brutal, his obsession consuming. Determined to find answers, Mark persuaded the group to return for another night at Waverly Hills. This time, they brought more advanced equipment, EVP recorders, thermal cameras, and EMF detectors. As the sun set and darkness swallowed the building, the group stepped through the rusted gates once more. The silence was heavier, the air thick with anticipation and dread. Inside, the temperature dropped rapidly, frost forming on the cracked window panes. The group moved through familiar halls, their equipment picking up a flurry of electromagnetic disturbances. Whispers floated through the static, voices crying for release. In one of the patient rooms, Lisa's thermal camera revealed a shadowy figure sitting motionless on the bed, its outline flickering like a dying flame. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness as all their lights extinguished simultaneously. Panic rose, and Mark shouted, "Stay together!" Then, from the pitch black, a low moan echoed, a sound of agony and despair that sent chills racing down their spines. When the lights snapped back on moments later, a faint blood stain appeared on the wall, fresh and glistening, though no one was near. Sarah screamed. A cold wind swept through the corridor, carrying a whispered name, Mary. They fled the room, adrenaline surging as footsteps echoed behind them, too many to count, fast and heavy. In the stairwell, a pale figure appeared at the landing, a woman in white, face twisted in sorrow and rage. Lisa raised her camera and snapped a photo. The flash revealed hollow eyes and a cracked smile before the apparition dissolved into mist. Outside, the group collapsed on the steps, hearts pounding, minds racing. They had come seeking answers but found only sorrow and terror. Waverly Hills was not just a place of death, it was a prison for tortured souls, a liminal space between life and the beyond. Days later, the footage and recordings they brought back were studied obsessively. The EVP captured chilling pleas for mercy, voices of children laughing, and the unmistakable sound of a metal bed railing scraping against the floor. One recording, clearer than the rest, held a whispered confession. "Set us free." The friends realized Waverly Hills was a nexus of suffering where the past refused to die. The spirits trapped within were not malevolent, but desperate, yearning for peace, for someone to acknowledge their pain. Yet, the sanatorium's dark energy remained. Locals warned, visitors often don't leave unchanged. Some return haunted, others vanish without explanation. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is more than an abandoned hospital. It is a crossroads between worlds, a place where the living brush against the dead. The nights after Maggie's encounter became restless and strange. The line between the living and the spectral seemed thinner, as if the lady in white's sorrow bled into Maggie's own life. Sleep was elusive, shadows lengthened, and the scent of lilacs, faint and haunting, followed her everywhere. One evening, unable to resist the pull, Maggie returned to Ironwood Bridge. The mist curled around the old structure like fingers from another world, and the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle. She stood on the edge of the bridge, staring into the dark water below, whispering Eleanor's name. Suddenly, soft glow appeared, a shimmering figure in a white dress, face blurred by tears. The lady in white reached out, a gesture filled with longing. Maggie felt a flood of empathy, the weight of a love betrayed and a soul lost. With trembling hands, Maggie spoke gently, "Eleanor, you don't have to wait anymore. It's time to rest." For a moment, the ghost's eyes met hers, full of centuries of pain and hope. Then, as dawn broke, the figure slowly faded, her form dissolving like mist in the morning sun. That night, the air around Ironwood Bridge felt lighter, The whispers ceased, the chill lifted. Maggie knew Eleanor had finally found peace, but the lady in white remains a timeless reminder, a symbol of love, loss, and the spirits caught between. Wherever the lady appears, on lonely roads, misty bridges, or quiet country lanes, she reminds us that some stories never end and some souls never truly leave. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the shadows, from vanishing hitchhikers to haunted sanatoriums and the mournful lady in white. These stories remind us that the night holds many secrets, and sometimes the past speaks in whispers, waiting for us to listen. Stay curious, stay brave, and until next time, keep your eyes open and your heart ready. Good night.